Welcome, Brad. We're excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here. Dave, this is impressive. I was sitting in the back, and as Dave said, we've known each other for some time, and it's fun to see what's happening at Client Success and here at Sundance. And you may have noticed that I was hobbling on the way up to stage. I just got back from Jackson Hole, Wyoming. There's a few years ago, I got into cycling, and this is right where you are is one of my favorite places to ride, up Sundance, and you go right up over the top of this mountain. And on Saturday, a bunch of employees from Adobe, and those of you who work on teams, if you have teams who report into you, sometimes competition starts to happen. And about 30 Adobe employees signed up to do this 200-mile bike race on Saturday. And they challenged me to do that with them. And so now I literally can't walk. We finished. You go from Logan, Utah to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So I'm a little sore, Dave.
And I heard rumors that you did pretty well.
We did okay, but the highlight of the training for the summer, and this is for you guys as you're making your way around the mountain this afternoon, keep your eyes peeled, because I was on a bike ride up just on this road with my wife this summer, and she stopped to take some pictures of the beautiful scenery. And a nice man on a moped pulled up and just said, "Isn't this beautiful up here?" And we weren't really paying attention. And then we turned around, and it was Robert Redford. So he's cruising around on a moped sometimes. So pay attention to your surroundings.
Brad's being a little bit modest. I heard rumors that he cut his time by 30 minutes, if I heard right, which is incredible improvement.
It was. We had a tailwind. It was good. It should be a little asterisk by that saying it was assisted by Mother Nature.
There we go. We all need that. So, Brad, I wanted to let the audience get to know you a little bit beyond business. And so you love cycling. You've got 3 kids, right?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit. How do you, as a leader of a multi-billion-dollar business, global business, how do you handle it? There's a lot of parents out here. How do you balance things as a father?
It's one thing. You threw out the word that I cringe every time I hear, and that is balance. Because and you talk about this probably in your own lives a lot, and it's always the question that gets asked. It's like, how do you balance? And I've stopped chasing balance. Yeah. Because I ended up beating myself up most of the time that I wasn't there. I believe the author's name is Amy Cuddy, C-U-D-D-Y. There's one of the most popular TED Talks she gives is about presence. And I listened to her speak again last week, and it just reinforced something that I've been focused on, and that's to be, if I'm at work, I'm at work.
Yeah.
If I'm at home, I'm home. I'm present wherever I am. And so, I've tried to give my kids all of me when I'm with my kids, and when I'm at work gets all of me. And sometimes it may be out of balance. I got one here.
Ari
you and me. I am present with you.
Come on, exactly. Ari's present. Well, good. And
that's all. I don't know that I'm succeeding in that, but that's kind of the method that I'm using right now.
Is there one place that you and as a family like to go and spend time to get away from work?
We, there's a couple different places where we've tried to do with our kids. When I have 3, and I've got a 17, 15 this Friday. She turns 15, and then 12. And we made our kids a deal when they turned 14. That they got to pick somewhere to go on a trip with just mom and dad. So 14 years old, you have to write a little research paper. Yeah. So you have to say, hey, this is where I want to go. Here's a summary of why I'd like to go there, a proposed itinerary, and this is what we do. It's kind of a little research project. And I failed to see the problem of managing expectations, because the first one, I thought we were going to go to Arizona. And he wrote about Italy. So we did Italy, and then the next one was well, if he went to Italy, so the last trip was to Thailand, and so the last one, the youngest one, is already talking about joining Elon going to Mars, because they have to one-up each other.
Exactly.
And so, we love wherever we are together. I don't know that we have one place, but we love to get out there and be adventurous.
That's great. It's It'd be good to be the Rencher kids in that regard.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, good. So how did you make it? What was your journey to Adobe? Where did you start, and how did you snake your way there?
So my career has been completely nonlinear. Like I'm a recovered investment banker. Yes, you can go ahead and throw tomatoes at me. Like, I started my career in finance on Wall Street and worked 100-hour weeks for a long time. Yeah. And I ended up out of school just being put into a technology investment banking group that took internet companies public. This is right before the .com. This is during the first .com bubble, where Pets.com was going public, and others that were there. And so I started there, and inevitably just started looking at the teams that were building those businesses and said, "Gosh, what they do looks like it's so much more fun than what I do." And it just kind of planted a seed in the back of my mind. And eventually, I was living in San Francisco. My family lives in Utah, so I grew up in Utah. And someone walked into the office one day and said, "Does anyone have any ties to Utah or understand what the Utah culture is all about?" And I was the guy who hadn't slept for 3 days in the corner. And I'm like, "I do." and we went out to an IPO pitch. It was for a company called Omniture, and we ended up. I was at Morgan Stanley at the time. We ended up winning Omniture, took them public, created a relationship with the founder and CEO of that business, Josh James. And next thing I knew, I was leaving investment banking to go there. And then a year and a half later, Adobe acquired the business. Yeah. Josh decided to go do other things, and the CEO of Adobe said, "Well, Brad, you're the last guy here. Do you want to do this?" And here I am. So it's better to be lucky than good.
Exactly. So you went through the Omniture experience. You came to Adobe. What was that like when Omniture was acquired by Adobe? Adobe didn't have a SaaS business, and in fact, in some ways, if I remember right, they bought Omniture to learn what it is to be a SaaS business. What was it like to be at Adobe in the early days, coming from Omniture?
Yeah, and you and I share this experience. Yep. It's Adobe's not a new company. I mean, Adobe's 35 years old, and in technology, technology years are kind of like dog years. So we are a company that has had to reinvent itself multiple times in order to stay relevant, and the CEO, our CEO, Shantanu Narayan, was really in his second or third year of his CEO tenure, and really, I think, saw that the status quo, preserving the status quo, was not an option. Yeah. And so decided to go buy this analytics company called Omniture. And literally, the people who write about these things are analysts. We all know them in SaaS. It's Gartner, Forrester. And I remember doing the briefings of the analyst meetings after that time. And literally, it was like, why is Photoshop buying a web analytics company? Yeah. It makes no sense. And I mean, just trashing the deal. Like this was the one that we got compared to was Symantec Veritas. If anyone's from Symantec, I'm sorry for calling this out, but it was not a successful acquisition at that time. And they were like, this is headed that same direction. But what Dave called out, there was a fundamental premise that was behind that, which was Adobe really didn't have an enterprise B2B go-to-market motion. So it really, Omniture became that. Yeah. And then two, the fundamental hypothesis was the data was going to matter. So you start to think about people creating in Photoshop and creatives and people doing that. You could no longer just go by gut feel alone. That you had to start to understand how your customers of that creative, were experiencing what you created and what was effective and what was not. And that was really the hypothesis that strung together a $2 billion deal. Yeah. And since that time, it really was the beginning of the what I would say is a two-stage Adobe transformation. The first was, hey, we're going to get serious about enterprise and SaaS recurring revenues, because at the time of the acquisition, Adobe's overall financial profile was, I think, 7 to 9% of our revenue was recurring. And this was for, a couple $1 billion business. So it was every quarter. And, I know many people in this room understand how SaaS works and the beauty of that. I mean, every quarter, Adobe had to go find all of its revenue again. And it created with our customers a really strange dynamic because we had to, you would buy Photoshop in every year and a half to 2 years. We were on these release cycles where every year and a half, 2 years. So we had to hide innovation from the market because if something leaked out that, this is coming in the next version of Photoshop, everyone would stop buying. And so then the revenue spigot gets shut off and then we miss, we're in trouble. And so you end up with this like asymmetric relationship with your customers that just isn't healthy. If we have innovation, I want to put it in market. I want to get it out there. And that was really one of the, the fundamental things where we had to rethink our fundamental relationship with our customers.
Yeah. I remember I was there. I was in a dinner with a client in London, and the email came through. It was about 9 o'clock in London. The email came through and said Omniture is being acquired by Adobe, and I was the same way. I thought Adobe isn't even on our radar. Out of everybody who could acquire, why would Adobe do it? But it was a brilliant move in the sense that it was a catalyst to switch over time. You agree?
Yeah, I think the fun part was you got the heft of Adobe behind a vision that we were that both companies were aligned to. And have any of you gone through, have been acquired before by another company? You've been at a company that's been acquired. How'd that go for you? Was that a positive experience in your life? Raise your hand if it was positive. Okay, we got a couple positives. The statistics on acquisitions, on successive acquisitions, they are horrendous. You just don't have, they're just typically not successful because you got culture mismatch, you got product mismatch, you got go-to-market mismatch. And this was one that worked. Yeah. And to the point where I got an MBA, and I remember if any of you have gone to and got an MBA, you spent all your time on case studies. And you're in class and you study these decisions that executives are making at businesses, and then you tear apart all their decisions and say, they missed it here, they were genius there. And I always thought, it'd be interesting if a case study ever gets written about a decision that I made. And 2 years after the acquisition, after it was clear that we were successful, we get a call from Harvard saying, we'd like to write a case study. And about the success of the integration. Because Adobe, over the last 9 years, our success hit rate on acquisitions is quadruple the average. Yeah. And so Harvard's in asking questions like, how is it that you do that? And it comes down to, I love, Dave, that you talked about culture. It comes down to, we've walked away from acquisitions and things that where our vision for what our customers need are different, and the company cultures don't match. Yeah. Because fundamentally, just like you're saying, don't think about the organization of customer success. Think about the individual customer. At the end of the day, even in enterprises, guess what? We're people. And people have to be able to work with other people, and that's really been the hallmark of how Adobe began this transformation. Is it comes down to, we had a culture match, and Adobe was willing to not squash a culture from something that was coming in, but to augment that.
Yeah. I remember that, and I talked about this last year, where Adobe, there was a cultural match, but there was also some things that both sides brought to the table to enhance it. I remember they said that they loved the fact that Omniture really had a focus on the customer, and that you would go into the Omniture offices and see everything about the customer, and then sometimes in the Adobe offices you'd see the patents on the wall, which was an interesting blend of cultures to think about. We've got to be a product-driven company, but do so with customers at the heart of things. So Brad, tell me, if we think about 2011, Omniture Business has been integrated for the most part. 2011 in November, Adobe goes to the street and tells them that they're going to transition their cash cow, their Photo Suite, Master Suite collection, into the cloud. The stock was 28 at that time. How did the street take that when Adobe had a very good business, a lot of cash coming in, and then they went and told the street they're gonna go to the cloud. Do you remember that time, and what was the reaction of the street?
Yeah, this is really the two phases of the Adobe's transformation is one, to establish a brand new enterprise SaaS category. And we started in marketing with the Marketing Cloud. We established that. That was really started with the Omniture acquisition, has continued since then. The second phase of that was to disrupt our core business, our 30-year-old business.
Yeah.
And Photoshop is a verb. It's one of the technologies that's gone like, hey, Google it. Like, oh, you Photoshop that. Like, I mean, it's an icon.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing from our perspective is we were separated from our customers, meaning we would sell to Office Depot. Office Depot would then sell Photoshop and the Creative Suite to our customers. We didn't know who they were. I mean, we had personas and we had clusters of people, but we didn't know how they used it. Yeah. And this is stuff that everyone in this room, you guys take for, you're in your organizations are probably wired on product usage, wired on exactly what's happening. We were not at that time. And so we had to change the way that that asymmetric relationship we had with our customers. And it was scary because we were still, even today. Now, Microsoft, you see them start to do this with Office 365 and other big businesses that are on a perpetual business model that is not healthy for customers. It's not healthy. It's not what customers want. It's not healthy for that relationship. But we had to take $3 billion and say, hey, investors who tend to not be, I understand that world, tend not to be the most long-term driven people, and say, we're going to do this because it's better for our customers and it's better for the long-term profitability of the business. We're going to take $1 billion in revenue away. Yeah. Well, where did it go? Well, we're investing it back into the business over the long term. And I thought the stock was going to get decimated. It went up 20% the next day. Yeah. So anytime you think that you figured out where stocks are going to go, just think again. It's like completely random. But it went up 20%, and since that time, it was at 28. I think we're trading at 156 today.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of the journey of how we created value for customers. Because if you focus, again, I'm preaching to the choir. We're at a customer success conference. You focus there, the financials and all those things take care of themselves. Don't put it the other way around. Don't optimize for financials first and customer second. That may give you short-term bumps in value, but it's not how you create long-term sustainable value.
Yeah. So the bet and the strategic move paid off, but there were some, as you made that transition, there were some key things that needed to happen. Adobe had their own transformation internally. What were some of the things that you noticed that changed internally to really support this massive business in the cloud?
You and many of you may see this in your organizations. We had and still have antibodies at Adobe. If you're changing, antibodies come out, and they're like, no. Like we're not gonna change that, and it happens. So the question that all of us have to ask is, am I an antibody? Yeah. Am I open to change, even if I don't understand the why? And when we said we're going to take the Creative Suite and put that, take that from, hey, I buy Creative Suite version 3, and now you just subscribe to it. We had some customers. We had to be willing to lose some customers. If we would have said we're not going to lose one customer, we wouldn't have made the transition. And that's hard to do. Yeah. But even more so internally, we had antibodies that were like, no, this is not the way that we do things. And it was hard. And the way that we got around that was identifying change agents inside the organization, people who were so passionate and willing to change and were really empowered and excited by that. And we enabled them. We aligned behind them.
Yeah.
That was the first thing we did. The second thing we did is we burned the boats. You hear this a lot of times. There was no going back. We went to the street. We said, we're going to do this. We changed everything internally. It's like, there's no going back. There's no choice. You're either with us, or we love the impact that you've had for Adobe, but maybe it's time for you to move on. Yeah. We had to turn over we had to do a DNA graft inside a 30-year-old company, which was hard, but it has been so rewarding to see people who have made that transition, and they were like, wow, I get it. That was the most rewarding thing I've done in my career. Yeah. My mic might be going on and off. Can you guys still hear me okay? The Renchers are blessed with two things, if my mic goes off. We have very big heads and big voices, so I may not even need the mic.
There we go. So I think one of the things when I was there, I was at it with Brad at Adobe for a few years. One of the most transformational things that I saw there was this program that they built called the Customer Immersion Program. A few others in the audience were deeply involved in that. And what they did was that they simulated the customer experience across all aspects and all touch points of the customer experience. So they required every senior leader to go through this 2-day immersion program, or none of them would get their year-end bonus. You can imagine at the end of the year, the few stragglers, there was a lot of pressure. But it was interesting because the immersion program included things like going to our website and finding products, looking and reading our own contracts, listening in on the phone calls in support, using our products to do things, talking to customers, and that to me was a very transformational process because it gave that empathy that I talked about in the keynote to every single senior leader, and you start to see that spread throughout the organization. Do you remember being a part of that? And tell me a little bit about your experience and what you learned from that.
I think it's really easy as leaders in any size organization to become disconnected from your customers.
Yeah.
It's easy because in every day, each of us could fill every slot of our day 18 different ways with different meetings. And none of them could have to do with our customers being successful using our products.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I think as leaders we have to do are the things that we uniquely can do. No one else can do this. Yeah. And by leaders investing in understanding their own customer journeys, how customers are succeeding, having that empathy, that's something that they uniquely can do as leaders because then you can impact culture.
Yeah.
Like other people can go look at the financials and the P&L. You have your CFO go do that. But having people who see that you're investing in customer success, and that's why that customer immersion program was a spark. And what I will tell you is, Dave and all of you, am I happy with where we are with our own focus on customer success at Adobe? No. Every day, like if my team were here, like I am not happy because we have so much to do. Yeah. And we're failing our customers in a lot of different places. And do I think that we're making improvements? Yes. Yeah. But man, as an organization and as an industry, I still think we have so much to do in B2B. Because B2B is much. The Adobe Experience Cloud is the product that I have and the business that we have. We have thousands of customers. As Dave said, it's a $2 billion business, and I've got huge B2C brands who use the products to deliver digital experiences, and then I've got B2B. The difference with B2B is it's so much more complex. Your customer journeys are so much more complex. People just don't go to the website and buy, and then, hey, that's great. They may call the call center. It's like, no, I've got 25 touch points before they even buy, and then afterwards, I matrix into a couple hundred people or thousands of people in the organizations that are using it. How do I support them? How do we get to be success? So the variance of what those journeys look like require a different level of focus. And I think we're letting ourselves off the hook as in the B2B industry if we say, hey, the only way to create those type of advocates that you see from the brands that you mentioned in your keynote, Dave, is that only happens in consumer. I don't believe that. I believe that we can do better.
Yeah, I agree. I remember in the immersion program, I was there the day that Shantanu, the CEO of Adobe, went through that program. I think Matt Jolly here on the front row was there. Had gone through the whole day, and you could see the blood starting to boil throughout the day. He was just getting so frustrated because
I remember the contracts.
Yeah, the contracts were big. We couldn't even read it. And we took him through the whole day of experience, and then we were up in the boardroom. It was Shantanu, the CTO, his chief of staff, and we brought in a customer to speak to them. And the customer went through his experience with Adobe, and again, Shantanu's blood was boiling. And there was a poignant saying by the customer. He said, I believe that Adobe's trying to build an experience to take me to the moon and back. I just want a good ride down to the corner bakery for bread and milk. Meaning, just simplify things. Just take back and from that point forward, Shantanu was a different leader, and I saw this different change within Adobe that was amazing. It was great.
And that's evolved, Dave.
Yeah.
What we're doing now, a couple different things that we're doing to push that down farther in the organization. It's interesting. The last 6 months, we've had a lot of success with our engineering teams, because engineers are another group who are critical to customer success but aren't on the front lines every day.
Yeah.
They're building products. So we've started to do hackathons with our customers.
Cool.
Which has been really, really fun, to where we have customers come in and say, here's the problem that I'm looking to solve. Yeah. I'm looking to personalize my website for these personas, and I want to bring in my own first-party data from my finance systems or other places, and combine that with what you have, Adobe, to personalize a website. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But then the engineers and the customer together take Adobe products and what they have, and they build that over the course of a day and a half.
Yeah.
And for our engineers, when they see what our customers have to go through to make our technology work the way it's supposed to, the light bulbs go off. And we've started to see innovation that's not for a new feature, like, hey, look at this cool button and look at what it does. Little fireworks go off when you push it. It's like, no, this helps our customers get to value faster.
Yeah.
And so that's one that I'd say we took the foundation of this customer immersion program, which was targeted at changing the culture at the executive level,
Yeah.
and pushing that down to other constituents that are important for customer success.
That's great. Empowering them to engage with customers and building for them, innovating for them. Adobe's mission is around changing the world through digital experiences. How do you foster the right environment in an organization your size, that large, to build personal experiences?
Well, it's so I fundamentally believe that every company in the world, whether they know it or not, are now competing primarily based on the efficacy and the power of the experiences they provide to customers. It's how we're going to be measured. It's how we're going to compete. Bottom line, that's Adobe. That's client success. That's all of you. That's how we're going to be measured. And so when you think about it that way, my very survival as an entity in a business is how well I can harness everything I have at this company to pay off in those little micro moments that matter.
Yeah.
And in digital, I have a saying that it's all about, can you perform as an organization in the last millisecond? Because think about it. I think there are, we're all awash in data about our customers. We know what they do, what they bought, where their website, how they're using our products. We have all of that. Oftentimes it's fragmented and we can't get that into one place. But we have a lot of that data. But it's, when someone had a great experience on Southwest, or I went to a website and I had a great experience. The interesting thing is you have about 300 milliseconds as an organization to take all that data that everything you know about the customer, and do something with it. You don't have a week. You have, from the moment someone goes www.adobe.com, click, 300 milliseconds before I have to show that web page, or an app, or an in-store experience, or prompting a Southwest gate agent to say something to me. 300 milliseconds is when the machines have to do their work. And if you can't perform in those 300 milliseconds, I call it the last millisecond.
Yeah.
It doesn't much matter what other customer programs you have, you're going to fail. And that's hard to scale a 17,000 person organization at Adobe to perform at the last millisecond every time a customer wants it. And that's the challenge, and that's the challenge that we all have in enabling customer success. It's not about it's about phone calls and thinking and having longer conversations, but it's those last milliseconds that are going to make the difference. Whether you wow someone and give them, and people take pictures like they did in the Tesla, where they're like, oh my gosh, that was amazing, or not. And it's the mosaic of all those last milliseconds together that create a high NPS. Customer success is the way I think about it.
Yeah, and it's that those milliseconds. It's really comes down to empowering the people who are on the front lines, and delivering on that last millisecond from a experience perspective and a B2B perspective. Talking to these leaders here, they're all customer success leaders at some of the greatest companies in the world. As a leader, how would you? What do you like to do when you go on site to visit a customer? What are important things that you do on site, and how should what are the types of questions that you like to ask to understand how your team's delivering for those customers?
Yeah, so I won't go visit a customer anymore. So like our client success managers, if they want me to go visit with a customer, I'm like, okay, here's what I need. And I do it as a way. I mean, I'll go visit any customers, but I do it as a way just to enforce the operational cadence I want our customer success teams to have. And that is, I need the conditions of success document. This is a document that we use internally during the pre-sales process and the implementation process to say, what is it that you're looking to accomplish, customer? You guys may call it different things in your organization. We call it conditions of success. And that articulates, I'm looking to improve my conversion rate on my website by 15%. I'm looking to generate an incremental $100 million in revenue. It's that level, tactics to say, this is what I want to go do. I won't go visit a customer if I don't have that articulated with basically signed by both customer and Adobe saying, this is what we're jointly going to go do. And all my questions are around the conditions of success. I don't talk about technology. I'm like, how are we doing on the conversion rate optimization? What are you seeing? And I won't do a meeting unless my client success managers come with that document saying, here's what we've agreed to. If they say we don't have it, or it's in email form, I'm like, go meet with your customer, create this, because if we don't know what we're doing together, how are we on earth going to know when we get there? And that's something that we put in place a couple years ago. We're not perfect with that. I think it's probably the 80-20 rule. I've probably got 20% of my team that's really good at it, and they're the ones driving the NPS scores. And then I've got 80% that we have opportunity for improvement. Yeah,
you mentioned NPS score. Are there any other metrics that you like to follow or look at?
So I break our framework up into three buckets, and I have customers that are in these three journeys at any given time. They may have one product that they're at the end and another one that they're investigating. So I have what I call our marketing to sign kind of journey. That's like, hey, I'm learning about it and I'm going through the pre-sales process up to the moment I sign. Second one is a sign to go live. And this is where at Adobe we 3 years ago I had to go full crazy uncle because we were screwing this up. We would
crazy
sign
uncle.
And then 6 weeks later, someone would show up and it's like, well, what did you buy? And what are we doing on the implementation? And we did not have our act together. So sign to go live. And then the last one is go live to value. So those are the three. You want to know how I structure my customer success program? It's around those three buckets. And in the sign to go live, those are more sales metrics, are probably less interesting for this group. It's more of the bookings or how long did it take to progress through the pipeline. The second one, sign to go live, I have the metric, the high level metric I use is days to first use or days to first activity. It's like how many days from the moment they signed, because this is the difference between B2C and B2B. B2C, I buy something and Amazon delivers it to my doorstep that afternoon and I'm playing with it by that night, whatever it is. In enterprise, we sign and it's like somehow we feel good about, 6 months later, you're going to be able to use that. If I'm a customer, I'm already mad.
Exactly.
And so we're really I'm looking at day, and we're driving that. I'm incenting teams on that. Cool. Then the last one is the high, and there's underneath that days to first use, there's 15 metrics that different teams use to manage that. I can't remember all those things, so I'm like, I want 3 top-level metrics that I measure across. On the third bucket, on go live to value, because value is defined differently by every customer.
Yeah.
And how they want to do that. So what I track there is basically is a derivative of like a monthly active user, a daily active user.
Yeah.
Is like, are people in driving activities, and then tying out to that. The underlying foundation to that is that conditions of success document, because that's how we're going to be measured. Our customers aren't going to, they're not going to come and say, oh, they don't articulate to me days to first activity as like a value driver for them. Their value drivers in that conditions of success. So I have to make sure that I keep those two things tethered together.
So with all these leaders, how would you, running a global business and you're giving advice to these leaders, what are the key things that you would say that they could do to drive this culture of customer success in an organization?
Yeah, I would tell you, know where you are in the journey. To where the way I articulate this is there's a time to be a flag planter, and there's a time to be a road builder. And so know where you are in the journey, to where if your organization needs a flag planted on customer success, you need to go plant that flag. And the people that you need to plant flags are different than the people you need to build the road to get there. And so understand where you are, to where if you have a flag planted, then organize yourself for the people who can operationalize and build that road. If you are not happy that you have the right culture, the right vision yet, then find someone who can be a flag planter. It's either you or someone else. And so that's the advice that I would have, is know where you are, be self-aware enough to be able to say, do I need flag planting or do I need road building?
That's great. We want to thank Brad for joining us today. Brad, thank you. Brad's been a great mentor, a great friend of our company, and love the insights and that he shared today and best practices today. So thanks for joining us, Brad.
Really glad to be here. It's great to be here with all of you. Enjoy your time. Yeah.
Thank you. Brad Rencher, everyone.